Okay, guys, I'm working on raising the bar lap quilt, and you had 15 strips of 6 rectangles that we've sewn together to make a strip. Okay, well, you assume, don't you, that these are 2.5 inches, but they're not. When I sewed them, I could tell that some were wider than others. So we have to trim every one of these 15-inch rows, and I've done them all except this one. But I wanted to show you. You can see, if you want to put it on here, you can see that this has to be trimmed. This one's perfect, and this one will soon be. And I put my 2.5 inch on the good one, on the one that I know is 2.5 inches. And that's my guide. And if I have to trim on both sides, I will. But for right now, I'm going to make this cut. And you're just doing slithers, but you see this pile over here? That's on all 15 of them. Just ever so slightly, you know, just a little bit. Now, I have some right there, so I'm going to turn it over. And I know you're thinking, oh, this isn't necessary. But I'm telling you, if I would have sewn those 15 strips together the way they were, it would have been so wavy. It would have been gosh awful. And I'm not going to do that. I know what would happen. I had a little girl that said, why do you start in the middle? And I told her to, because it helps you avoid the wavy lines of jelly roll strips. Okay, here it is. I'm matched with these 2.5 inches perfect. So I can slide those 2 down. Now look at this. This is my good one. So I've got my 2.5, and I've got my 2.5 lined up. I'm only, at first I thought, oh, I'll just trim one side, but then I could see that sometimes I have to trim both sides. Here's 2.5. And 2.5. Then move it down some more. I have still just ever so slightly a little bit to trim right there on that side. But this is good right here, 2.5. And get it right butt up against those little jagged edges. Some strips are worse than others. Some are basically pretty good. Now, when you line this one up, try to get the whole thing on there. Now, all we need is this one strip. And now my strips are 2.5 inches all the way down. And well, I can't guarantee, because it depends upon how good you are with doing your 1/4 inch seam all the way down straight. But this simplifies taking the wave out of that jelly roll strip that you would have had before, because how do you know we're going to pin our sashing on here, and how would I have known whether to pin it to the smaller or pin it to the bigger one? You don't know. You would be guessing, and you would have a terrible, terrible row. All right, I just wanted to give you that tip. Hi there, this is Jacqueline with Nickel and Dime Decor, and I have our Raising the Bar quilt on the bed, and I'm going to put a picture. I'll move it down in just a second. This is, I think, the 3rd video, and I'm going to talk to you about piecing the strips, 2.5 inch strips with the little tiny 1 inch sashing. This is a tricky quilt because when you're using 2.5 inch jelly roll strips and that thin of a sashing, your strips can get wavy and very crooked. So I want to give you some tips, okay? Just to make it easier on you. I think if you'll try this method, you'll never have any problems, okay? All right, let's put the camera down. I have, as I showed you in the previous little clip, trimmed all of my 2.5 inch strips to 2.5 inches. And that's very, very important to have them exactly even. Now I have added one of the strips on the right hand. It doesn't matter which side. You can do the right or the left. It doesn't matter. And that's what I'm in the process of doing. I'm going to move over here. I'm adding to the right on every one of my strips. I pinned it, I turned it over, pinned it, and got it exactly. That's why your 2.5 inch strip has to be perfect. Okay. Keep doing that until you have every strip, 2.5 inch strip, with a piece of the sashing on the right or the left. Then you will join 2 strips together and pin and sew. And I'm going to turn it this way so I can see what I'm doing here. If you sew this way, to me it's easier. So I'm going to sew 2 strips together. And I'm going to pin and sew those together, okay? So you're going to end up with 2 strips. And then, let me put this back. Then do the 2 strip method, 2 strips, join 2 strips, join 2 strips all the way across. Go from one side to the next side. Okay. Then you will have a combination of your 2 strips sewn together. Then you take those 2 and combine them with the next 2. Take 2 more and combine them with the next 2. So you will end up with foursomes. Now there's an odd number of strips, so of course that won't work perfectly, but so you're going to have 4 strips that are sewn together. Then you can take 4 and 4 and add them together until you get to the end, and then add 4 and 4 and 1 more or whatever it takes. That way you do not have your 2.5-inch strips getting wavy. That happens when you're trying to add narrow pieces to straight pieces. And it can be crooked and it can be a holy mess. And you think you're doing it right by just starting from one end and sewing. But when you get to the end, I'm afraid when you put it out on the bed or your design board, whatever, you're going to say, oh my stars, how did that happen? It just does. So that's my tip for you. Remember, see, this sashing is going to be, see, we have to sew that again another 1/4 inch. So this sashing is barely going to be a 1/2 inch wide. Very, very narrow. That's why it's apt to twist. It's a very small piece of fabric. It's a wonder, but being darker, it'll show up still real good. It'll work just fine. Okay, well that's all for today. I want you to just concentrate on the center part and adding it together. And then when we get to the sides, we'll have another video. It's just going to be beautiful. I cannot wait till it gets put together. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're having a wonderful day.